that we needed to get him help. That if we didn't get him help, that he could die. That was really the feeling, that he was going to die or we were going to lose him. I can feel the tension in my neck and shoulders building right now, just putting myself back in that place.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to California Preaching. Jesus is my rock, and that's how I roll. This is an episode of Honestly Speaking, and today I have Rebecca, one of my oldest, dearest friends. Love, Rebecca. I'm so grateful to have you here today, Rebecca. We're talking today about marijuana-induced psychosis. It's a real thing. Her son, Toby, has walked through this exact thing. She's going to share honestly with us today about her story, her testimony. I just have to tell them a little bit of our backstory. So I was at a Santa Monica Beach hotel and I was just swimming away and I see this gorgeous girl laying there in one of those chaise lounges, just, in her bathing suit. I always feel like it's important to let other women know that they're beautiful, So I walked right up to her, I swam up to her onto the end of the pool there. And I said, "Hi, my name's Chynna." And she's like, "Oh, my name's Rebecca." And I said, "I just want you to know you are so pretty."
Yep, you did. You did do that.
I have you on the show today because you just have such a remarkable story of redemption. So your son, Toby, who I love, when did you first start to see or start to become suspicious of some signs that maybe things were not quite right?
October, sophomore year of high school, he was invited to a party. And by 10 o'clock, we got a phone call from the parents of that home and said, "Your son is extremely drunk and you need to come and pick him up." Remarkably, it was directly across the street from where we live. And if you know New York City, that in itself is a miracle because it could have been downtown. We walked right across the street and Toby was throwing up in the bathroom and was very sick. And we dragged him. As we were leaving, the father came up to me and said, "How often does this happen?" And I got defensive and I was like, "This doesn't happen." I felt really personal about it. Like, this is the first, and it was the first time that it happened. But now looking back on it, that man saw something that I was not able to see that night. And that this was not normal. You don't get that obliterated like that if you're well. So that was like the first sign of, okay, maybe this might be an issue. And then it just got increasingly worse through high school. It was a reflection upon me. I looked at it, my pride, my ego was like, "You've shamed me." And I made him get up at like 7 a.m. to go do charitable work the next day. And he kept apologizing to me over and over again. Like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And he cried. And now, if I could do it over, I would have had compassion for him. But I was really lacking in compassion at that point in time.
But I can completely identify with that feeling of like being personally shamed by your children's behaviors. We're not unique in that way. I think people would be more willing to be honest and upfront and transparent about what's going on in their lives if there wasn't so much judgment. Yeah, just kind of like that scarlet letter, put on your child and on yourself,
I feel like if you have more than one child, you soon realize that there's just no escaping it. There's going to be one of your children is going to cause you grief and fear. I heard somebody say once, "You owe your oldest child an apology." Toby started abusing marijuana. I would say that's what they call, his drug of choice. And with that, he became, we lost him. We lost him. I mean, that became his everything. I couldn't relate to him any longer. He was distant from the family. There was no respect for the family whatsoever. When he went to college, he went to a really great university, always did well in school. And sophomore year, he came home from college and he was not himself, like really not himself. He came home, he looked like a homeless person, unshaven, hair just wild. He left all of his luggage at school. He didn't bring home any article of clothing, nothing. He came home with just a kitten that he had gotten, and that was it. And
a kitten.
A kitten. Yeah, a kitten.
Wow.
Adorable kitten. He was manic but I did not know what mania was. I'd never even heard the word before. His energy level was just extremely high, and we couldn't get him to settle down, and he left
But did
the
this
house.
blindside you when he came home like this? Were you like, whoa, hold on, what is happening to my son?
It was incremental, but this was like jarring. You know, I mean, I had been fretting since sophomore year of high school. You know, I'd been seeing him going down a path. I reached out to parents. I reached out to the school. I spoke to my husband about it. I was a nervous wreck. I mean, like I can feel the tension in my neck and shoulders building right now, just putting myself back in that place. But everyone brushed it off.
A lot of people would say, marijuana, come on, big deal, you know, please, we all smoked pot back in the day, you know, like people just minimize how tragic a marijuana addiction can be.
I knew then, and my husband did, thankfully, you know, because this site was just like, what, that we needed to get him help. You know, that if we didn't get him help, that he could die. You know, that was really the feeling, that he was going to die or we were going to lose him. I thought, okay, he's moved on. He's moved on from marijuana to harder drugs. I had no idea that marijuana could create what it was actually doing. So I had him drug tested, came back clean of all things except for marijuana.
Wow.
So I think that's really for, you know, for parents and just for people to know that it's very serious. I stayed up hours in the night, like thinking about, you know, what if your son is an addict or your teen is an addict, but there's still very little mention of if your son is having a marijuana-induced psychosis, inevitably what this all turned out to be. But I'd never heard that language before. So I felt very alone. So where I did spend my time is I need to find an interventionist. Where can we find an interventionist? Because it was scary. It was scary. I mean, this was somebody we did not know. We did not recognize this person, but he was cornered. He was underage and he had no money. Like, what could he do? We gave him two alternatives. He could leave that day to go to the rehab center, or we would show him the nearest homeless shelter, the safest homeless shelter in New York City, and get him food stamps.
Now, some people might say, wow, that sounds extreme. And then other people might say, right on, that's exactly what you should have done. Did you have friends who thought you were being a little harsh, or did you have friends who thought that you had gone to an extreme?
So I really dove into doctors and interventionists, and I started getting their advice. And then from there, they would give me another mother to talk to, or another, you know, someone who'd been in my position. I got my strength from those people.
So when you did the intervention, how did it turn out? I mean, was he receptive?
No. He was not receptive. He was very hurt. He took it personally. He felt ganged up on. He wasn't in his right mind. I don't think he could have comprehended anything we were saying. We were the last. He could have cared less about us at that point. All he cared about was getting high.
Tell us a little bit about the role that God has played in your recovery, because many times people say that we are sicker than the person that is the actual addict.
I mean, I completely lost my mind. And not only that, I made my house sick, you know, my other children sick, my husband sick. I thought that it was my job. I had to save my son. My son ended up walking out of the rehab center that he was in, but I was in New York City when I got the call from Oregon that Toby had been picked up. He had had a full psychotic break in the parking lot of a grocery store. Police picked him up and brought him into the psychiatric hospital, and I got a phone call from Oregon to come out there. One of my first things I asked them was, what drugs is he on? And they had done a full drug test, and they said that he only has THC in the system.
Oh my gosh. This was 100% THC fueled.
Yes.
Episode that he had. There was no cocaine. There was no acid. People, are we understanding this? That just marijuana can make an individual snap psychologically.
Absolutely.
They can have a snap. So this is a really important message that Rebecca and I are trying to convey to you guys today, is to understand we have first-hand evidence that this is for real, that marijuana can and does affect the human mind in such a way. Now, we're not saying that everybody who smokes marijuana is going to have this experience. As a matter of fact, chances are they probably won't. If you are noticing dramatic changes in your child and you know for a fact that they are smoking pot, it's critical that you take it seriously, that you take it.
Absolutely. So when I landed in Oregon, I rented a car, went directly to the psychiatric hospital. It was not a pleasant place. It was not warm. There was no warmth there. Took me into a room. It was a padded room, just block furniture, I guess, so that people couldn't hurt themselves. I'd never experienced that. I didn't know what was happening. And I could see Toby coming to see me through a glass wall. And he came into the room and he said, "Thank you, Jesus. I never thought I was going to see you again." And he wrapped his arms around me. And we just sat there for a really long time, but he was completely lost. He just laid his head down on my lap and I just rubbed his head for a while. And the social workers came in and people came into me and they were not kind. I wished I could say that they were kind, but they were not. They were punishing. They were making it out as if he was this spoiled, entitled child. And it was the first time in that meeting that I had heard psychosis. And I was like, psychosis? Like, what are you saying? I mean, that was just the scariest word. I mean, it brings me to The Shining. And they said, he's having marijuana induced psychosis. He was there in the hospital for about a month. So I was there living in Oregon for a month.
Oh my goodness. Let's talk a little bit about Al-Anon. How do you feel Al-Anon has helped you in your life?
Oh my goodness. Al-Anon. I mean, I feel like I owe it all to Al-Anon, really. Al-Anon is the sister program to Alcoholics Anonymous. Bill Wilson's wife, Lois, founded Al-Anon for family members, who are struggling with, addiction. It's non-denominational. There's no political agenda. There's no agenda other than you getting well and you finding your relationship with God. Al-Anon is about building your conscious relationship with God.
And reliance on God.
Completely, everything. Yeah. All of it has to do with God. Yeah. And Toby went into another 3-month facility after that.
Reluctantly, or was he on board and excited to be getting his life back on track?
I don't think he was, excited to go into another treatment facility. The addiction had not been solved.
Has Toby been in and out of hospitals since that first treatment, or?
He has been in short stints, all spurred on by marijuana.
So he has not been able to maintain complete sobriety yet.
He had not. He's been sober now for almost 6.5 months and he's doing fantastic. But throughout his college years, he did complete college, got his degree. But during those 3 years, he did relapse. And a couple of times he had to go into the psychiatric hospital there on campus, but just for 3-day stints. I speak more to mothers because I am a mother, so I'm walking in their shoes. There is a way out of this.
Yeah.
There's absolutely a way. God does heal.
You have endured, you've walked through this trial and this test. And I always say, turn your test into your testimony. And I feel like that is what I know. That is what you've done. You've turned your test into a testimony. And I just know that has to be, like I always say on this channel, Holy Spirit activated, that has to be from God. You're compelled to share your story. You're compelled to help people. You're compelled to get the word out. And as a matter of fact, we're praying Rebecca's link to her testimony. And you can find the link to Rebecca's testimony in this video in the description.
I know how many parents are out there suffering with children who have mental illness and addiction. And I just want all of you to know that you can get through it. You can get through it because God will take care of it for you. I'll share the most recent story. My son did relapse and months and months ago, and I asked him to leave. It was over Thanksgiving, and I did not have any fear. I did not speak to him. I did not know where he was going. God did for me what I could have never done. And I experienced a peace that transcends reason. We did not hear from him again until Christmas Day. And not for 1 second was I afraid.
Wow.
Not for one, I did not lose sleep. I did not talk about it. I had been building my connection with God, praying every morning, every night, building it up, showing God that I trust you. I trust you. If you can give your son for me, what can you do for my son? It's taken me 3 years to get to that place where I was able to do that. I saw my son recently and he said, Mom, you and I need to go talk. We need to go sit down and have a coffee. And I thought, oh gosh, here we go. He's going to tell me that he's relapsed. My mind went right into those evil spirits were just coming in. And we sat down and he said, Mom, I just want to share with you that I'm sorry, that I'm sorry for all the pain that I've caused you, that I can't see things from your perspective, but I do want you to know that I'm sorry. And what can I do to make it better? And what can I do to move it forward, us forward?
Praise God.
And that was a miracle. That was a miracle. That was God even in that moment saying to me, look, you wanted to go to the negative. Like you hear something from him and your immediate thoughts are, I'm going into the negative, but I had a gift for you. Why am I thinking the worst when you've given me no reason to think that? It's incredible, really.
I need to hear this so badly, Rebecca, because as you know, Vance suffered from stage 4 cancer, and every now and then he hits it a little bit too.
Right.
It terrorizes me. Terrorizes me, the idea of, a relapse. And if I could keep him in a room and feed him green juices all day long and hook him up to my little machines that I have that are supposed to kill cancer cells and stuff, I would have him on it all day long. But I can't, that's why I always said oh, why couldn't he have gotten cancer when he was 7 or 10? Because then I would have so much more control over his lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? But what I'm saying is that I want to thank you because you're giving me hope, and you're giving me the courage and the wisdom and the insight to say, Chynna, this is out of your hands. All you can do is pray and have faith, forwarding all issues to heaven. Like I said, where's Toby today? So he did graduate, right?
Toby graduated. He's financially independent. He's got a girlfriend that he loves very much. He's what God had designed for me all along. I could have never dreamed it.
People consider marijuana to be medicinal and healing. Many people do. Yes. And for many people, do you believe it is healing and medicinal for people, Rebecca?
I would never want to speak for other people and what their experiences are from it. I'm sure that it does help with certain degrees of pain. So if people claim that they need to smoke weed because it's helpful with their anxieties and such, I would probably ask them to examine that a little bit more or look into it yourself, because I don't think THC does any of that.
Do not be fooled into thinking that, oh, well, my kid's just smoking a little bit of pot and it's fine. I think that I grew up smoking pot. My mom smoked pot. It was around the house all the time, and it was an escape for me, and it was a Band-Aid from the pain I was feeling. What started to happen was I started to get very paranoid, and I started to feel anxious when I was smoking it, and it just wasn't fun for me anymore. But the THC levels back in the 80s, I think were very different than they are today.
Very different. Back then, people were not being hospitalized for marijuana. They are now. They are today. Because now you have edibles that have so much THC in them, whereas you should eat one potato chip, the kids eat an entire bag, they end up in the hospital with an overdose. You know, there's not the deaths from it, but they're overdosed and they can be in the hospital for 5 days.
What would you say to women who are walking through this right now or are realizing at this very moment, oh my goodness, this is what this is, and I haven't known this whole time?
I would advise them to get in touch with experts, turn to other parents, other mothers, other family members who have walked in their shoes. Like, do not go to your friends or your family members who have not experienced it, because they cannot help. They do not know what it's like. And it wasn't until I got on my knees that things began to change. And I am here to tell you that God really does work miracles. You can get through it, and it can be better than you ever imagined it to be if you hold Jesus's hand and you walk through it.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, for your time and your love and your wisdom and just your courage and your strength. It's just amazing. And I'm not just saying those words, Rebecca, I have been so blown away, just so impressed by your commitment to God, your commitment to your child, your commitment to recovery. I know you've blessed everybody here at California Preaching, and we're just all so grateful to have you here today. And we wish the best for you and for your family, and of course for Toby.
Thank you. I love you.
God bless you. Peace of Christ.
Peace of Christ.
Bye. Hey, you guys, if this video blessed you in any way, I pray that you will subscribe. And I also pray that you'll press that little button next to the subscribe, because that is an alert button and it will give you a notification every single time there's a brand new Cal Preach. And of course, share, because sharing is caring, and you just never know who's going to find the peace of Christ. Amen.